There's a certain kind of soul that walks away from the crowd, not out of arrogance, but necessity. The noise, the endless explanations, the constant performance of being someone in a world obsessed with visibility. It all begins to feel unbearable. So they retreat, not to hide but to breathe. Because for the deepest souls, solitude is not loneliness. It's oxygen. At first, solitude feels strange. The phone grows quiet, the invitations fade, and the room echoes with your own thoughts. You notice how addicted the world is to noise, the validation loops, the quick opinions, the endless scrolls. But then something happens. Clarity starts to rise from underneath the chaos. You begin to hear your own voice again, the one that was drowned out by approval and comparison, the one that doesn't perform, it simply is. Andrew Huberman would say this is the nervous system recalibrating. When you detach from constant social stimuli, your brain shifts out of reactivity and into restoration. The dopamine highs of attention are replaced by a slower rhythm, one of serotonin and deep calm. Your body learns safety and stillness again. And that stillness, though uncomfortable at first, becomes the ground where purpose is born. Viktor Frankl understood this long before neuroscience could prove it. He observed that meaning is not discovered in applause, but in silence. In the absence of distraction, the human spirit begins to ask real questions. Why am I here? What truly matters if no one is watching? These questions are terrifying because they strip away every illusion of identity we've borrowed from others. But they are the only questions that lead to freedom. The deepest souls crave solitude because it's the only space large enough for their inner world to unfold. Attention shrinks life into performance. Solitude expands it into truth. The moment you stop needing to be seen, you begin to see yourself. You start to realize that peace was never out there. It was buried beneath all the roles you were trying to play. Napoleon Hill wrote about this in his own way. He called it the quiet hour, the time of day when creative minds withdraw from the world to commune with their definite purpose. Hill understood that every great idea, every vision that reshaped history, was born not in noise but in stillness. Edison, Lincoln, Da Vinci, they all retreated from attention to listen to something deeper, because true creation requires space, and space demands solitude. Neville Goddard would take this further. He'd say solitude is not empty, it's full of creation. In your quiet moments, you enter the workshop of imagination, where unseen realities begin to take form. Goddard believed that every outer world is an echo of inner imagery. So when you sit alone and imagine clearly, you're not escaping life, you're authoring it. The solitude that looks like isolation is actually the sacred ground of manifestation. But the modern world fears solitude. It confuses it with failure. We equate attention with worth, likes with love, visibility with value. And so, people fill every silence with noise, music, messages, movement, terrified of meeting their own reflection. Yet what they're running from is exactly where transformation begins. Frankl once wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. Solitude works the same way. The moment you see it not as rejection, but as refinement, it transforms. It becomes the forge where your scattered fragments melt into coherence. The loneliness you feared becomes the womb of your rebirth. Huberman might call this neural pruning. When you step back from social overstimulation, the brain literally trims unnecessary pathways, conserving energy for what truly matters. You stop chasing what doesn't feed you. You stop explaining yourself to those who never really listened. You begin to think in longer timelines, breathe in slower patterns, and act with deeper conviction. And something beautiful happens. Your energy changes. You stop attracting chaos because you're no longer resonating with it. The people who thrive on noise can't find you anymore. The ones meant for your frequency arrive quietly, as if guided by intuition. Solitude becomes not a wall, but a filter, keeping out what dilutes you, keeping in what nourishes you. Napoleon Hill said that silence is the mother of thought. In quiet hours, the subconscious mind becomes fertile, receptive. Ideas surface, insights align. You begin to plan your life instead of reacting to it. You start moving with precision instead of impulse. And when you do step back into the world, you move differently. Your presence carries weight. You speak less, but every word lands deeper. There's a story told about a sculptor who was asked how he created such lifelike statues from cold stone. He smiled and said, "I simply remove what doesn't belong." That's what solitude does. It chisels away the noise, the false identities, the borrowed dreams. It strips you down to essence. Attention adds layers of performance. Solitude removes them until only truth remains. Goddard might say that this is the point where the imagination meets faith, because solitude asks you to believe in what can't yet be seen. No audience is clapping, no evidence is visible, and still, you trust. You sit with your unseen vision until it feels real. You nurture it in silence like a seed beneath the soil. And when it finally emerges, it doesn't need attention to survive. It is attention embodied. The deepest souls are not antisocial. They are simply tuned to subtler frequencies. They feel life too acutely to stay numb. They see through pretense too clearly to play along. For them, solitude is not a rejection of the world, but a return to reality. It's where they remember what's eternal. It's where they touch God, not through noise, but through awareness. Frankl would remind you, meaning isn't found in what happens to you, but in how you respond to it. The soul that chooses solitude over attention is responding to life with wisdom. It's saying, I will not trade depth for display. I will not lose myself in the applause of the crowd. Because attention, no matter how bright, fades. But solitude, that quiet dialogue with the eternal, renews forever. In solitude, you start to see that your worth was never a negotiation. You stop measuring it by engagement or recognition. You feel the relief of not performing. You begin to enjoy your own company, the softness of breathing without an audience, the quiet joy of creating without broadcasting. You taste freedom in its purest form, the freedom to exist without proving anything. And this is when expansion truly begins. The mind that once chased attention now chases understanding. The energy once spent on explanation turns into creation. You read more, think more, notice more. You start to see patterns in your pain, lessons in your silence, beauty in your stillness. The world, which once demanded your constant presence, begins to reveal itself to you in subtler, sacred ways. Hill would say you're now in harmony with your definite purpose. You've stopped scattering your will across distractions. Your focus sharpens. Your intuition strengthens. The ideas that once eluded you now find you easily because your mind is finally quiet enough to hear them. Solitude, it turns out, is not isolation. It's alignment. And so, you begin to crave it. Not as an escape, but as a homecoming. You no longer fear being unseen, because you realize that the unseen world is where everything begins. The roots are invisible before the tree appears. The thoughts are invisible before the action manifests. The prayers are invisible before the miracle unfolds. Everything real starts in silence. So the next time someone asks why you're quieter these days, why you no longer share every detail of your journey, smile. Tell them nothing. Because what's happening inside you can't be explained. It's being born. You're not lonely. You're in labor with a new version of yourself. Frankl would call that meaning. Hill would call it vision. Goddard would call it creation. Huberman would call it transformation of the nervous system. But you don't need to name it. You just need to live it. Solitude isn't the absence of love. It's the space where real love can find you. It's where your spirit stops shouting and starts listening. Where you remember that you don't need to be seen to exist fully. You just need to be present, to yourself, to the moment, to the quiet pulse of life moving through you. Because one day, when you finally learn to rest in your own silence, you'll discover something profound. The attention you once chased was just a shadow of the awareness you now embody. You don't need to crave eyes on you anymore. You've become the light itself.